Welcome to In the Slot, your one-stop shop for all things hockey here at WCBN. My name is Joshua Tenzer. I am joined here today by Connor Earegood and David Kraemer. We are your hosts on this wild NHL trade deadline day. There have been more trades today than any trade deadline since 2015. We're here to break it all down for you, so enjoy the show. Connor, David, how are you feeling with today being done?
I'm glad it's over. This was exhausting depending on who you're a fan of. That's all I'll say.
If you're a fan of the Red Wings, it was a pretty good day. I could stay up like 17 hours.
Oh, man.
It's just nice to have it back. You know, the 2021 trade deadline had so much going into it. There's the different there's the Canadian division where you couldn't go there because you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and players didn't want to go there. I mean, not that players want to go to Canada now anyways, but still. And then there's all this talk with the different divisions that don't play each other. Now it's just nice to go back to having teams that are going for it, teams that are selling, teams that seem to be giving up at the prospect of playing hockey for the next 2 years. And, correct me if I'm wrong, this is there were like 2024 and 2025 draft picks being thrown out. This is like the NBA trade deadline, where you're thinking about futures, where the players that are going to be drafted are like, oh, I hope they had a really good algebra class today.
Yeah,
I hope they enjoyed geometry. So, let's start with the biggest headline. Obviously, Thursday was when we recorded our last episode, and then Friday we put it up. Before then, Claude Giroux wasn't traded, and now he is a Florida Panther. It was an interesting trade, I think is the nicest way to put it. Claude Giroux goes to the Florida Panthers along with German Rubtsov, Connor Bunnaman. Both of those are AHL players, and the 2024 fifth-round pick. In return, the Flyers acquire Owen Tippett, his AHL contract, a 2023 third-round pick, and a 2024 first-round pick. But if it's in the top 10, it becomes a 2025 first-round pick. What's your gut reaction to this?
That's a great trade for both teams. And, I know that's a hot take, but, I just feel like Florida has to buy. This is their window with 2 contracts expiring. I kind of said it Thursday, but it also gets him off the market. Because, imagine if, Tampa had picked him up or something, or Boston. Then you have to beat a wagon plus Giroux. You're toast. And then they get a couple guys for depth in the AHL. And, Rubtsov's not that bad. From what I've seen in preseason games, could be a guy that you call up if there's 17 injuries. Hopefully there's not. But I really like it.
No, I agree, Connor. I think that this was a really good trade for both teams. And I think the point that you made was really astute. Florida is probably not as deep, at least in their, in the offense, especially as you get down in those lines. Okay. Caveat is they're really deep, but think about their divisional opponents, right? In terms of playoff experience, which I think is, matters. The Florida Panthers' bottom 2 lines are not filled with a lot of playoff experience. Wherever Giroux is going to slot in, they're going to have to overpay if they're trying to be the first team in the market to get Giroux, right? And at the end of the day, I think Owen Tippett is a little bit of an enigma. He definitely has that name value, being a first-round pick a couple years ago with a lot of kind of potential and a lot of expectations for him. But he hasn't really met them in his short, albeit brief, NHL and AHL career. It feels like he's a player that I personally have been waiting to see get into the NHL for a while now. And I think it's kind of he's going to a Flyers team where I think he'll be situated to make an impact. If at the very least you have to make that replacement. If you're going to exchange one ginger from Philadelphia, you have to be bringing a new ginger in, right? It only makes sense. But no slight on Owen Tippett, who's definitely a talented player. I think he has room to grow. And again, I think the court of public opinion for first-round picks is very lenient, right? and you're willing to, kind of let things go for a little bit longer than they necessarily should. But I'm hoping that for the Flyers' sake, that Tippett, is able to develop there.
I don't know. It's a really tough situation for the Flyers to be in. I don't think this is the maximum they could have gotten. 2 firsts, Tippett being 1 and a third.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Giroux had a no movement clause, and he said that the only team he would waive that for is Florida. He kind of forced the Flyers' hands, and I've seen that really divide a lot of Flyers fans on Twitter and on other social media websites, because on one hand, you have Giroux, who has given so much to this team, that has built so many very bad hockey teams around him, saying, can you do right by me this one time? But on the other hand, hockey is a business, and maybe you could have gotten more from the Avalanche. Maybe you could have gotten more from Nashville.
And, I know Mackie Samoskevich from Michigan was on the table. I was kind of following that. Covering Michigan, I want to be in the know on that. And,
yeah.
I think if he doesn't make that move, they totally pick up Mackie. And, he has high upside for the NHL, the way, he's been able to score in his vision on the ice. He would have been a guy that, he's going to probably make the NHL and at least be a good middle six player. Could be a top-line guy if he develops right. That's a big loss.
The Panthers are glad that they held on to Samoskevich. That is a huge win in there.
I thought they weren't done.
That's incredible.
The fact that they kept him, I thought they weren't done. I thought he was going to get dealt because, every sign pointed that they were just going to clear the cupboard and go for it. And, maybe we look back in a year from now and they choke in, the conference final and we say, man, they could have used some extra defense. They could have packaged him up.
Well, the Panthers, they weren't done after the Giroux trade, as you mentioned. They also got Robert Haig from the Sabres, who is a mediocre defenseman, all things considered. He's currently on the Sabres, so take that with a grain of salt. But 48 games, 8 points, a -9, 91 blocks, and 97 hits. So he's definitely one of those physical kinds of guys.
I think he's boys with Giroux, though, because he's from Philly, right? He played for him.
Yeah, that is true. They are reuniting. So that's
it's a 6th-round pick. They have nothing to lose.
No, they gave up a 6th, so yes.
If in the worst case scenario, that's a lateral move for Florida. And for Buffalo, I hope you don't mismanage that pick.
Unless it's Pavel Datsyuk.
It's a 6th-round pick. What are they gonna do?
They would find a way to make it the worst pick ever.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, it was a really big deadline for the Panthers. They gave away Frank Vetrano to the Rangers. They acquired Ben Sherratt, which we talked about on Thursday's episode of In the Slot. That's still currently on YouTube. And at the very end of the day, the last trade to go through NHL's Central Trade Registry, which, based on the fact that there were 33 trades in line, makes me think that they're using some really old, antiquated technology, and they just haven't switched to email. The Florida Panthers retain 50% of Max Domi's contract. In return, they get Yegor Korshkov from Carolina. And that may be a questionable move. Having said that, if you look a little deeper, Florida has Aaron Ekblad on the long-term injured reserve, and the closer you get up to the cap ceiling, the more LTIR relief you get, because the NHL salary cap makes exactly 0 cents. So they cleared up some cap space with Vetrano, made a bunch of moves, had cap space left over, helped the Carolina Hurricanes get Domi. At the end of all of this, it seems pretty clear the Panthers, they're in win-now mode. This is it. They're going for it.
Love to see it. Just love to see it.
It's exciting. It's nice when teams know that this is maybe the best year they've got. So they push all the chips in and they say, all right, let's do it.
I love a win now, Florida Panthers. That is so exciting. It's different, It's a change up. We're so used to seeing teams below the Mason-Dixon line, teams below, teams in the South, right? These expansion teams, if you can still even call them that. The Panthers came into the NHL before we were even alive, being terrible, right? Being the laughing stock of the league. The Florida Panthers are a team that you would want to avoid, right? But they're finally good, and they're going all in too, and that's exciting. The trade deadline is something that adds to the hockey experience and increases, visibility for the league. I can't think of a better example than Kevin Weeks today and his antics over the past couple of days, and his wonderful coverage. His wonderful coverage being, being this traveling journalist, and making trades and going all in, and putting your chips on the table and saying, this is what I'm betting and this is my expectation for these playoffs. That's exciting. That brings good attention to the league. So, way to go, Panthers. I am rooting for the Panthers. That is my Eastern Conference pick.
Okay. Well, speaking of the Panthers being the team to avoid, they only won a playoff series in 1 year. Granted, it was the year they went to the Stanley Cup Finals back in 95-96. But since then, they have shown up in the playoffs a total of 6 more times, and they have lost the first round in all of them. Yeah. Qualifying round if you count the Islanders in 2020.
You know who they lost to in 96, right?
The Avalanche?
Yeah. Another team that bought in. Love to see it. I want to see them go back to the Stanley Cup Final and Florida get revenge almost 30 years later.
Okay, we're going over to the Avs now?
Oh, no, I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if that's the next on the schedule, but, could you imagine?
That would be real fun. I wanted to see Bengals 49ers this year.
Ooh.
Because Bengals 49ers was the matchup 2 times in the past, and both times the Niners won. So
if we're talking a little NFL just for the next minute, I'd say this trade deadline has been very reminiscent of the NFL offseason with all the swapping, especially in terms of the quarterbacks we've seen.
Yeah.
But good. I love trades. Trades is one of my favorite parts of sport, are one of my favorite parts of sports in general. I don't think there's anyone, unless your team is making the bad trade, and we'll get into,
We'll reach the St. Louis Blues later.
Yeah, we'll reach the St. Louis Blues later, to not just spoil it anymore. But there's just such a great positive energy in the air, nervous energy. It feels like an extended draft, kind of, but with immediate satisfaction, right? Not that kind of delayed satisfaction. Yeah. So I think maybe we were talking about the Avalanche next, or maybe we're going to just kind of see where this goes. What do you think, Josh?
I was going to say, while we're on the topic of teams that fully bought in, we could reach the New York Rangers for a hot second.
Love it.
Because they were super busy the past couple days. So we already mentioned the Frank Vatrano deal. They got Vatrano from the Panthers for a 4th-round pick. It's going to be the worst of either their 4th-round pick or Winnipeg's 4th-round pick. The Rangers have both this coming draft. Interestingly enough, just a little tidbit there, Frank Vatrano wears number 77, last worn by Tony DeAngelo, and he got his first goal as a Ranger against the Carolina Hurricanes, where Tony DeAngelo currently plays. And Tony DeAngelo's definitely not burner account had some things to say about Frank Vatrano after the game, which makes me happy. Also, for those of you who don't know, there's a Twitter account called NYR Fan, and then a whole bunch of numbers. And while Tony DeAngelo was being kicked out of the New York Rangers back in January of 2021, it very much seemed like it was a Tony DeAngelo burner. And then it went really silent.
That Pittsburgh Penguins locker room geolocation tweet.
Yeah. Where's this coming from? Oh, an NHL locker room? It's definitely not Tony DeAngelo. Then the Rangers made a bunch of moves today as well. They got they did a tiny AHL swap with the Sharks, trading Nick Merkley for Anthony Bitetto. Then they started doing a lot of low-risk, high-reward, fill-out-the-bottom-6 moves. They got Andrew Kopp and a 6th-round pick for Morgan Barron, 2 seconds, and a 5th. One of
Love
those
it.
seconds upgrades to a first if the Rangers win 2 playoff rounds and Cop plays 50% of games, and one of them is either a St. Louis Blues pick or a New York Rangers pick. Winnipeg gets to choose which one they want. And then they weren't done because they picked up Tyler Mott in exchange for a 4th rounder. So the Rangers have 3 new bottom 6 pieces throughout the past couple days, and it feels like Drury, Chris Drury, the New York Rangers general manager, says, okay, Igor is playing the best goalie hockey that anybody has seen maybe ever, depending on how the rest of the season goes. And if not, then since Dominic Hasek and Patrick Waugh. Yeah. You've got Mika Zibanejad, point per game. Artemi Panarin, over a point per game. Adam Fox is going to reach a career high in points. Chris Kreider is going to reach a career high in goals. Already has, actually. He might hit 50 by the time the season's over. Then you have Jacob Trouba, more goals than he's ever scored in his career. This is the all-in move from Chris Drury, bolstering the bottom 6. He picked up a third-line center. Sure, the Ryan Strome contract for a second-line center is still up in the air. This is Strome's last year. I was hoping to see an extension out of him, maybe, by the end of the day. Unfortunately, that never happened. So depending on how Kopp plays, Kopp might be the second-line center for the Rangers. It looks like there's some competition for that spot.
Hot take, Tyler Mott for a 4th is a steal.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude is an absolute unit in the bottom 6. Can kind of plug in anywhere. Good penalty killer. Doesn't make stupid plays. I can't think of one Tyler Mott mistake for Vancouver at all.
Very Sunquist-esque.
Ooh. Really?
Reminds me of Ivan Barbashev, too, with these Blues kind of examples. Maybe Ryan Carpenter is also a poor man's Tyler Mott, going from – he was moved by the Blackhawks today as well, which is kind of a sneaky pickup, in my opinion, at least, by the Flames. But yeah, Tyler Mott, again, a U of M alum, correct?
Yes.
As well as Andrew Kopp. So the Rangers now with 3 former Michigan players, which is exciting to see. And yeah, it's really good on the penalty kill. That Rangers team, wow. That probably one of the, if we're giving the too early to say winners of the trade deadline award, it's probably got to be the Rangers for me.
Over Florida?
Over Colorado?
Yes, I think so. I actually think so. I think the Rangers were closer than those 2 teams. Maybe they need a little bit more on defense. Hold on, not closer to a cup. I take that back, but I think closer to getting where they needed to be. Out of those teams, I don't know if Giroux adds that much, guys. I think Giroux is like a goalie. We have really high expectations, but then those expectations are kind of, we don't know where they're going to be. Maybe I have post-traumatic Ryan Miller disorder. But I'm a skeptic. Not that Giroux's a bad player, not that Colorado didn't make any good moves, or the Panthers, but I think adding a defenseman at the trade deadline, a bottom pairing defenseman, always a great move. You can't go wrong with that move, right? That is tried and true. But adding 2 good penalty killing forwards, defensively sound forwards, a team benefits from that more than I think adding a goal scoring talent come the playoffs. If the playoffs are traditionally, as we've seen them to be, low scoring affairs where no one's making any mistakes, you want those players who aren't going to make those mistakes, like Andrew Mott or Tyler Mott and Andrew Kopp. And Andrew Kopp can also throw in a little offense there as well. So,
you know what?
I think
I think you're onto something, because with the Florida Panthers,
whoa,
they've got such a great. They have the best offense in the NHL right now. They have the highest scoring offense. How much is Claude Giroux going to actually help?
I knew I was onto something. Yeah.
No, you're right. Because Barkov, Verhaeghe, Huberdeau, Duclair, Sam Reinhart, Noel Acciari,
Marshall, Lundell.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I'm avoiding Mason Marchment as someone who watched him on the Leafs. I refuse to believe he's good. It just doesn't compute.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. They got him off the market. You know,
It's the sun. It's the Florida sun.
It is. It does something to these players.
It's his proximity to the Everglades.
I mean, the weather in Florida is a heck of a lot better than it is in Ontario. I tell you that much.
Yeah.
How much is Giroux gonna add?
Face-offs. He's good at face-offs, isn't he?
He is, but he's also a left winger.
He's been there though. Like
You're
correct
right.
me if I'm wrong. He was on the 2010 team that lost to the Blackhawks. That maybe they win it based on asterisk pretty soon here. Who knows? But I mean, he adds depth. He adds a little bit of leadership. He's one of those guys. Everyone who's been in a locker room with him loves him. Like maybe that's what Florida needs.
We'll see.
You're right. Every team has different needs.
I just don't think they needed a Giroux.
They needed a ginger that was good.
At least if they were,
sir.
I'm Cork.
They have
he's on Philly.
Oh, you're right.
If he was on the market, trade for him. Have you seen his goals this year? He's got like 3.
I don't know. I think that Sherratt trade, a little bit of an overpay, but that's what you're going for. That's perfect deadline. It's not entertaining. Those are not fun trades to cover. Those are pedestrian trades, right? You're like, okay, I get it. The Giroux trades are what make the deadline worth it, and those goalie trades, right? Those are the best parts. But I really am in the school of thought that adding those Savards, adding those those defensemen, that gives you that help. You don't have as many defensemen on a team as you do forwards. When one defenseman goes down, you need the next man up.
Yeah.
The playoffs, you need someone who's on a kind of a crummy team. They weren't stressing their body too much. Bring them in, and they're that insurance piece. They're that insurance player. When it comes down to the wire. That's my 2 cents.
And Sherratt's kind of like just a lockdown guy. Like he was good in the playoffs for Montreal, a team that had no business beating Vegas in the conference final. Just a solid workhorse defenseman. What I think Ducharme called him like the 4 Clydesdales. He was one of them. Who knows if he replicates that with Florida? But like, if they're gonna make a push, it's good to have him.
Yeah. We also mentioned the Avs, and I don't think they made the swing that Avs fans were hoping they were going to make this year. They got Andrew Cogliano, 50% retained, for a 5th-round pick from the Sharks. They got Arturi Lehkonen, which is honestly pretty solid.
Underrated.
50% retained. They just had to give away Justin Barron and a second. And then, of course, they got Nico Sturm and Josh Manson. We talked about that on Thursday. I like Arturi Lehkonen. I do. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's the swing that Avs fans were hoping for. And maybe, just maybe, it's because the Avs think they're good enough as they're currently constructed. They don't need to.
I think they are good enough. I think they totally are good enough as they're currently constructed. I think that that trade for Manson was their swing.
Yeah.
Maybe that Lehkonen, in terms of what you gave up for Lehkonen. But yeah, Lehkonen's super underrated. Lehkonen's Tyler Mott. Same type of player.
Yeah.
I feel like this move too is so that way next season they have some good players in the roster. At least for Lehkonen. They have arbitration RFA rights with him. He's going to get a little bit of a pay bump, but if they're going to lose probably Nishushkin, I don't see Kadri re-signing just because he's going to want a wagon of cash, and I don't think they have it
and
for him.
And he's going to get that wagon of cash, 74 points in 59 games.
And like you signed Burakovsky, I think, before him, just as someone who might get called on because he's a little younger at the trade deadline. Say you end up being horrible later on, but they're a good team. They have some good prospects in the pipeline. I mean, they have Martin Kaut, who's going to be coming up soon here, who has a good shot. who else do they have here? Let me look through.
They've got a lot of people they need to
Sampo
resign.
Ranta, anyone that watched Big Ten hockey last season knows is going to be at least a good middle six shot. He was Minnesota's MVP last season on a team that I have no clue how they didn't make a deeper NCAA tournament run. I mean, they were insane. They have a good team already, and their D-core is going to stay the same for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, their D is locked up, but they've got a lot of problems when it comes to re-signing on the offensive side of things. Burakovsky, Kadri, Nichushkin, Lehkonen, Abe Kubel, Darren Helm, and now we're getting to like the Nico Sturman, Andrew Cogliano. Those are all names that have to be signed either as RFAs or UFAs. And with goaltending, Josh Manson, Ryan Murray, not goaltending, pardon me, defense, Josh Manson, Ryan Murray, Curtis McDermott, and Jack Johnson, oh no, and Darcy Kemper. So you've got a real problem if you're the Avs, because you can't get most of those players back. You could probably get 50 to 60% of those guys back, but your team is going to look markedly different come next year. I thought they were going to make a much larger swing because this is their last chance. As this team is currently constructed, this is the last dance. And they were in on Giroux before Giroux said, I only want to go to Florida. So we'll see.
I mean, think about what puts teams over the edge. I don't know. The deadline's so, it's magic. It's voodoo magic. It's so iffy. I don't know if, like the Bruins getting Hampus Lindholm. What's that do? I don't even know if that's a good trade. That feels like I don't think that's a good trade, honestly. I don't think it's a terrible trade, but it seems like too much. There's so much meddling. Like we've said before, and I think I will continue to say, the NHL general manager is the most neurotic, anxious, overthinking person on the planet, right? Outside of a world leader and a military person and maybe some people on Wall Street, right? These people are thinking about every single the way that every single other team is making a move and how that's going to impact them. These teams are going to try and cover every, dot every T or dot every I, sorry, slash every T and dot every I, right? Right? They're going to try and and then they're going to overpay because the market's going to dictate that they have to overpay when they're doing something in the 11th hour. So they can make all these moves, but I think at least where current logic stands, I think it's the smaller moves that have the bigger impacts. It's those low-key moves. I'm not too worried about the Avalanche. They definitely need to go all in, but like we said about Florida and with the Avalanche as well, I don't think picking up Giroux is going to, put them over that mark. What do you guys think?
I mean,
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Can we talk goalies now?
I was going to say real quick before we get to that. Speaking of being pushed over the edge, there's one more huge name that we have to talk about before we get to goalies and then before we get to teams that may have disappointed. Mark Giordano just played his 1,000th game. Just like Claude Giroux just played his 1,000th game. And just like Claude Giroux, he was immediately traded. Mark Giordano is a Toronto Maple Leaf. Giordano and Colin Blackwell came to Toronto. Giordano, 50% retained, so the Leafs only have to pay $3.375 million of his cap hit. In return, the Seattle Kraken acquire a 2022 second, a 2023 second, and a 2024 third. The Seattle Kraken now have, I believe it is 21 picks in their next 2 drafts, including 7 second-rounders. Is Mark Giordano what's going to help the Toronto Maple Leafs be pushed over the edge? I know you're not a big fan of huge deals, David. You like the low-key deals. Mm-hmm. But the Toronto Maple Leafs have been infamous for being unable to get out of the first round. Last year they got Riley Nash, who didn't really play a game for them, and I forget who else. They got a couple other rentals.
Foligno,
Nick Foligno was the other name. Yes, Thank you. And that didn't help them at all, because Foligno also got injured. Well, Giordano, this is their rental, I guess. Do you see this working out for the Leafs?
Overpay, but it's not that bad. I'm gonna say bias as well. Defense. This team needs defense. This team is not a good defensive team. I don't care what statistics say. This team is just not good. It is a bunch of second pairing guys on the first pairing, and the whole team is like a defensive is average defensively, and I don't know. I think this is an okay trade. It's an overpay though, but it's a classic deadline overpay. But if this was the price for Giordano, I don't know why Calgary didn't just pick him up. He probably hasn't sold his house there yet, right? That could be fun.
I believe it was part of the expansion draft rules. I think they kept him because there was like a salary retention thing, I think.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then.
Which but still someone else could have picked him up, and I feel like the Leafs needed a goalie. I don't know if you guys saw. I don't know if you guys saw the two Kyles arguing, Kyle Davidson and Kyle Dubas, about how the Fleury talks got leaked publicly. Who knows if they get in a fist fight in the stands? But I mean,
could be.
Can you share that, Connor?
Yeah, I was on TSN.
Okay.
So right now the defensive pairings, because Muzzin's injured, for the Leafs is Morgan Rielly, Ilya Lyubushkin as their top pair, which, yikes. TJ Brody, Marcus Giordano is your second pair now, and Liljegren Hall, who, that's not serviceable. The Leafs are in severe need of defense, and Giordano provides that. Does it mean anything if the Leafs don't have a goalie? I guess not. Jack Campbell's on the IR and also was playing the worst hockey of his life before he went on the IR for like a month. Peter Mrazek just cleared waivers, and 2 years ago I could have never imagined saying the words Peter Mrazek is on waivers, let alone Peter Mrazek clears waivers, because no one claimed him. And Shalgren has been hit or miss. Shalgren has looked good in some games, and some games he's putting up an 850. So I don't know. The Leafs missed out not getting a goalie. I don't know if a defensive trade helps if they couldn't figure out that hole in net. So yeah.
What happened to Mrazek? Literally, what happened?
No, he's been awful everywhere. Carolina had good defense and made him look like a stud. They did it to Freddie Anderson too. No, he's been horrible since he gave up an empty net goal against Tampa Bay, Game 5 of the playoffs. Just coughs it up. Tampa Bay wins. He's been awful since then. Since before then.
It looks like it's in his head. He doesn't look calm. Because
he can't stay in the net.
He can't stay in the net. Exactly. As I say, he can't stay in the net. He's constantly overreaching, getting himself out of position because he's trying to make just a save, any save, and attacking players are able to go around him like a hoop around a barrel.
Like, Michigan fans can sometimes be a little skeptical about Eric Portillo playing the puck.
Every time he leaves, my heart stops.
But the thing is, he's making good plays at least 90% of the time. I mean, sometimes someone pinches weird and he makes an odd play. It's cost him a couple times.
You mean like he did in the Big Ten Championship this weekend, where he put it up against the side of the net from the corner?
It didn't count, though.
It didn't go in. But
it didn't count, so it's okay. With Mrazek, they go in. Whether he shoots it in himself or not, they end up in the net. He's done it, I don't know how many times. I feel like he's got a lead in that stat. No one keeps that stat. At least I don't think they do, but I guarantee he's at least top 3 in NHL history. Because he does it all the time. It's like he thinks the blue paint in the crease means no-go. Like, don't go there.
I know you guys are hating on goalies playing the puck, but come on, it's so fun. That's the best part. That's the anxiety. I think it does work. Ben Bishop's good at it. Binnington, despite all of his flaws, that's like the only thing he's good at this point. He'd make a great defenseman. He'd make a great 7th defenseman.
What, he gets 2 assists a year? He helps out, get 5 goals on a rush.
That is more than Jack Campbell.
Yeah, well, the only goaltender puck mover that I really want to see is Igor Shesterkin. He keeps going for that goalie goal. I think he's tried like 3 or 4 times. He's going to get it one day, and he's getting closer. That's the only goalie puck moving I want to see. So, I guess it's time, David.
Poor Peter.
Let's get to goaltender trades. Marc-Andre
right.
Fleury
Oh my god.
escapes Chicago. It looked like he wasn't going to. It was concerning for a long time, but finally, he doesn't have to play for a bad team. Marc-Andre Fleury goes to the Minnesota Wild, 50% retained. In return, a second-round pick. The conditions on that pick, it upgrades to a 2022 first if Minnesota reaches the Western Conference Final, and Fleury has 4 wins in his first 2 rounds.
So that's a first. Wait, actually,
good.
I don't know if that's a first.
Well, the Minnesota Wild, they've got... Their goaltenders are Cam Talbot and Marc-Andre Fleury.
I think they can.
Still can't believe they traded Kakkonen.
Well, here's the thing about
for
the
nothing,
Kakkonen
for spare
trade.
parts.
Fun fact, on the Kakkonen trade, let me just find it. The Kaapo Kakkonen trade. Right, okay. So, he goes to the Sharks. The Wild get rid of their backup goalie, Kaapo Kakkonen, to make way for Marc-Andre Fleury to come in. In return, they get Jacob Middleton. They're both on league-min contracts, so it's a net zero.
Not a bad defenseman.
And the 2022 fifth-round pick goes from the Wild to the Sharks. That fifth-round pick was originally San Jose's, and it came to the Minnesota Wild last year when they traded Devin Dubnyk to the Sharks. A different backup goaltender. The Sharks gave that pick over, so now that pick has been involved in 2 Minnesota Wild giving goaltenders to the Sharks trades. Just a fun fact for you there.
Man.
I like Fleury going. I don't know. I think they look good. Because you got to think, too, Talbot carried Edmonton into a Game 7 against Anaheim. They could have made the Western Conference Final in 2017, back when McDavid wasn't universally hated. Well, okay, that might be harsh. Hated by people that aren't in Edmonton. Just, the thing they have is experience in that. And I feel like that's the important part, because you can be a really stellar goaltender, but if you can't handle the swings, I mean, that's where this trouble starts, right? It's all, like we said with Mrazek, it's in between your ears. You know, it's the mental part.
I agree.
Goaltenders, it almost always is.
Yeah, they're voodoo,
Look,
as you say.
It's a good trade. It's definitely a really good trade. Because the risk, I mean, if this doesn't work out for Fleury, you're right. They still have Talbot, who's pretty good. Yeah. And they got a low-key underrated defenseman in Jacob Middleton. I was looking at his stats. That's a free 20 minutes a night that he was playing in San Jose and doing a good job, too. I know plus-minus isn't where it's at. And I know it's kind of not a great stat. And I'm not a stats guy myself in the way that Josh is, or even Connor. I can't speak on your affinity for stats or not. I like stats. I just don't know too much. I need to educate myself a little bit more. But he's got a +3 on San Jose on the season for like a kind of a random defenseman who I've never heard of until today. He's good. He's low-key good.
Yeah.
Minnesota, way to go. Oh, yeah, picking up Jost as well. Okay. Random. This is a long-term move. If Fleury really likes it up in Minnesota, you know.
He won't.
I don't know. It's like Chicago. It's not as nice as Chicago. But like it's different. It's different.
It's cold.
I don't know. The Midwest. I like the Midwest. Midwest is homey. Fleury, welcome again to the Midwest. This is the true Midwest. This isn't the Chicago Midwest. But I don't know. I like it as a fan of the NHL and as a fan of the crazy hockey goalie trades, but not a believer in them. A fan, but not a believer. There's a difference. That's all I got to say.
It'll be fun for him when the Minnesota Twins win a World Series. I'm calling it. As a Twins fan, don't ask me why.
A Twins fan.
That's fun. So,
Josh, what do you think
about Fleury?
Fleury, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like that he's out of Chicago. I want him to have one more real run at it, and the Wild are giving him that position to do so. I also really like Cam Talbot because as an ex-New York Ranger, like I saw, Henrik Lundqvist in, I want to say 2014, no, 2015 maybe, He got hit in the neck with a puck after someone stick lifted his neck shield.
Yep.
And he was out for like 20 games. And I saw Cam Talbot stand on his head and become one of the best goalies. And, I mean, the New York Rangers, Benoit Allaire, their goaltender coach, has a habit of just making the greatest goalies out of nobody. Antti Ranta, Cam Talbot, Henrik Lundqvist, Igor Shesterkin, Alexander Georgiev, who stood on his head last night to shut out the Carolina Hurricanes. Fun fact, we're just talking about stats, I just want to give you a little tidbit. There's a stat called expected goals percentage. Basically, the more you're on the ice, while you're on the ice as a player, what percent of goals is expected to be for your team? 100% means whenever you're on the ice, you never are expected to allow a goal against. 0% is you're never expected to score. Your team is never expected to score while you're on the ice. The worst Carolina Hurricane in expected goals percentage last night was better than the best New York Ranger. Every single Hurricane was better than every single New York Ranger in terms of expected goals percentage, and the Rangers won that game 2-0. Georgiev did so well last night. Anyways, back to the topic on hand of Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm not sure if Fleury's going to get a starting role with Talbot. I don't know if they're going to go back and forth, whoever's the hot hand at the moment. I don't see Fleury getting extended playing time, but the playoffs are a mysterious beast. Players go down randomly with season-ending injuries, and you always have to be prepared. You always have to have a 7th defenseman, a 13th forward, a 14th forward, and a backup goaltender you can slot in if you need to. And Marc-Andre Fleury is certainly that.
I mean, when's the 2018 took Vegas to the final, right?
Yeah.
Took him to the conference final last season. Before then, should have taken him deep, but San Jose gets a I don't know if that's a major, but is what it is.
Yeah.
Scores 3 late goals. Like, what they do the year before that in the play-in? Did they make the conference final that year? Pretty sure, second round at least. Yeah.
They beat the Hawks, didn't they?
Yeah, in the play-in, right? No, in the second round.
That was the first
round, technically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got experience.
He's so good.
Plus Pittsburgh, and he can be the backup. Like he showed when Matt Murray was actually good. Like,
yeah. What a trade. And Kakkonen to the San Jose Sharks, really good trade, too. Yeah. That's future thinking out of that, out of San Jose. I want to touch on a couple more trades just to get them in because we don't have too much time left. Just some, interesting return homes. Brian Little to the Yotes. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, that's a strange one.
Marcus Johansson back to the Capitals.
I like
his
that.
original team. Poor Daniel Sprong. A little much. I don't know. Arizona has like every random player to ever play in the NHL now on their roster.
It's all the guys in NHL 15 that had like 4.5 Red Star potential.
Yeah.
That never turned into anything.
Absolutely.
That's what Arizona's building a team around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, David, I just want to get your take. And Connor, you're a Red Wings fan. David, you're a Blues fan. Those two teams made a deal with each other.
Oh yeah, they
earlier
did.
Today. I just want to get your opinion on them. There's no hard feelings around here. It's a friendly podcast. The Detroit Red Wings acquire Oscar Sundqvist and Jake Wallman, who's on a league-win contract, and a second-round pick from St. Louis. And you might be thinking, wow, the Blues gave up Oscar Sundqvist. Aren't they like on the bubble of a playoff spot? They must have gotten something real good in return. No, they didn't. Luke Witkowski, an AHL contract.
That?
Luke Witkowski.
Who is that?
He's the guy that got 10 games because he was trying to fight Kachuk like 3 seasons ago. He's awful.
And they've also got Nick Leddy, who is Nick Leddy for $2.75 million.
Steve Yzerman got in this trade the second rounder he paid for Nick Leddy. Richard Panik was 50% retained as just a depth forward. So there's Sundqvist at the very least, plus Jake Wallman. How is that not a win if you're a Red Wings fan? That's huge.
David.
So wrong.
I mean,
that's like literally so wrong. That is so. What is happening in St. Louis? Doug Armstrong. Does he have a third eye? Does he know something that we don't? Because it feels like he does, or he's losing his mind. How is Marco Scandella still a Blue? What is this? Like, oh my gosh.
Steve
Is Nick
Yzerman.
Leddy gonna like come back and like prove us all something that we don't know? I feel like this secret is being kept from me because I'm in such denial about how horrible this trade was. As a Red Wings, I am not a Red Wings fan. I'm a Red Wings supporter because I believe, maybe Josh will disagree, but I believe you can only be a fan. You can only get mental illness from one team, from one franchise.
Oh, that's very not true, my friend.
Okay, well, the Blues do that for me. I don't have the fortitude to choose two. But the Red Wings are the team I support in the East, aside from the Panthers. Because the Panthers, I'm on the bandwagon fully. The Red Wings, I've been a supporter since Larkin was on the team, because I've been a fan of Michigan for a while. But wow, what a great trade. The Yzer plan. Does he do something? Does he do something with these general managers in order to get them to like get a trade? Does he booze them up? Does he,
It's those beautiful brown eyes. He just FaceTimes them and just looks and they're lost.
Yeah.
He's got to know where the bodies are buried.
He's got to know where the bodies are buried. Totally.
Did he play with Doug Armstrong? Did Doug Armstrong play?
Well, Doug Armstrong is the like perennial Team Canada GM when the Olympics come around. At least he has been for the past while. He was an assistant at Dallas from like the 90s to the mid 2000s before he went to the Blues. He's been around. He knows a thing or two.
Yeah.
But Stevie Y, he's got some dirt on all these GMs because he's able to make some insane trades.
He must be talking circles around all these other guys.
Look,
GMs since 2010.
The Red Wings have done a decent job of giving Fabry more opportunity. I want to see Wallman turn into Wallman would make a great pairing with who's that? With Mo Sider. Wallman and Sider could be real.
What about Simon Edvinsson when he comes?
Yeah, you're right. Even better. Wallman's flexible. Wallman could be a first or a second pairing guy, even a third pairing guy. He can be anywhere in the lineup. Same with Sundqvist. Sundqvist is a player that you build your third and fourth lines around. You may not consider a player that deep on the team to be a franchise player, but I truly believe Sundqvist is a franchise player in the way that he anchors the defensive bottom two lines of the forward core, because he is so versatile. He is a horse, and he will just ride and ride and ride. He can fight. He can score. He can defend. You'll get him on the power play if you're really hurting, or you'll get him on the penalty kill, and he's a leader, and he's a cup winner. Okay, the Red Wings, please take care of Oscar Sundqvist. I might even, I'm not gonna buy a Sundqvist jersey, but if I were to buy a Red Wings jersey, I would maybe buy a Sundqvist jersey because he is fantastic, and I'm a huge supporter of him. And thus, the saga of the Ryan Reeves for a first-round pick and Oscar Sundqvist to the Pittsburgh Penguins, saga is almost over. I can't believe the Blues got Sundqvist for Ryan Reeves and Klim Kostin so many years ago, and I can't believe that Sundqvist's time in St. Louis is over. Holy cow. Oh, my gosh.
We're running short on time here. I'm going to ask who your biggest... We talked a lot about winners of the trade deadline. We talked about New York. We talked about Florida. We talked about the Avalanche. Who are your biggest losers of the trade deadline? I think, David, we may have just gotten your answer.
Blues.
For who the biggest losers are. Connor?
I don't want to copy the answer, but, that's a bad trade from the Blues. I don't know. The Leafs for not getting a goalie to be different.
Yeah, and also maybe the Oilers for not getting a goalie.
Yeah, but the Oilers, I don't know if they're expecting to make a deep run this season. I think they're just going to take their lumps.
Yeah, that's fair. I've got two that I had in mind. One is Seattle Kraken fans. Anyone who got a jersey for any good player on the Kraken, enjoy it. They're not on the team anymore. I guarantee you they're gone. The Seattle Kraken are just looking for a mulligan at this point with the expansion draft. We all knew that they didn't do well in the expansion draft. They didn't get the players they should have gotten. They didn't make the big splashes. They got rid of Marcus Johansson. They got rid of Appleton, Lauzon, Giordano, Blackwell, Yarncroc. It's a bad day to be a Kraken fan, but at least you got some futures to build up. You're just going to rebuild like every other team without ever having experienced the success of every other team. And my other loser of the trade deadline is just going to be Vlad Nemesnikov. He's been traded 4 times since February 2018. I just feel bad for the man.
For a fourth every time.
Yeah.
He loved Detroit, too.
He did. So, yeah, the Rangers got rid of him for a 4th-round pick, and Nick Ebert, who I don't think Nick Ebert has done much of anything. He went to the Senators, and now he's in the Swedish Hockey League. And then the Senators got a 4th-round pick for Vlad to go to the Avalanche. He signed with the Red Wings, and then the Red Wings got a 4th to send him to the Stars. And he was also part of that whole nightmare of a trade. His name will forever be linked to the worst trade the Rangers have made in recent history. Ryan McDonagh and JT Miller going to the Lightning in exchange for Vlad Nemesnikov, Libor Hayek, Brett Howden, a 2018 first and a 2019 second. I forget who those guys turned into, but
I can't believe
sure
that was actually a trade.
They're not on the team anymore.
That's awful.
Let me just take a look real quick. 2018 NHL draft. So while I'm going to find who the Rangers got, Niels Lundqvist, who is on the team in some capacity, kind of. He's okay. And then the 2019 second. While I'm looking for that, I will say that if you enjoyed what you're listening to in the slot, you can certainly listen to more of it as Carl Henriksen is the other guy who is just never going to be in the NHL at this point.
Oof.
So really, the Rangers got a bottom pair defenseman for JT Miller and Ryan McDonagh. Bad times. Alright, so if you liked what you listened to, you can tune in every Friday morning. There will be a new episode of In the Slot posted to this YouTube channel. We've got Big Ten, now that the Big Ten playoffs are over, we've got the NCAA regionals and then the Frozen Four coming up. We've also got some signings in the NHL that we didn't get a chance to talk about today. So stay tuned for that news. For David Kraemer and Connor Earegood, my name is Joshua Tenzer. Good night, and go blue. Good show.